Welcome to the Sunflower Conversations, where we explore the hidden disability sunflower and its role in supporting people with hidden disabilities.
Joining me today on the Sunflower Conversations podcast is Goulder, who has epilepsy, and Daniel Jennings from charity Epilepsy Action. Today we are talking about absence seizures and access to venues. Welcome both of you.
Thank you, Chantal.
So let's get started. Murray, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, no problem. Right, so I'm 43 years old. I've had epilepsy for 27 years. I'm an HR manager at Royal Mail and Parcel Force, and I have absence seizures. Yeah, that's pretty much what and I'm married.
So you've got a full-on role there. HR manager. I know that they're a very, very busy department in any company that you go to, and obviously the Royal Mail is huge. So let's explore a bit more. So what is an absence seizure, and when did they start for you?
Absence seizures are you lose awareness. I don't lose consciousness with my seizures. I'm just not sure what's going on. Mine last anything from 20 seconds to 2 minutes. And when I have a seizure, if I'm moving already, I continue to walk autonomously. I can fidget with my clothes. That can be a sign that they're happening. I can dribble. And if you're in a classroom with me, I might stop and I might stare at you. Sometimes I talk, mumble, and yeah, that's about it. There's some of the symptoms of an absence seizure.
So it's quite a distinction to make, isn't it? Because there are different types of seizures that people who have epilepsy can experience. So absence seizures, what you've just described, it doesn't look as obvious as the tonic-clonic where you would fall to the ground. So in your experience, what have people thought is going on when you're having a seizure?
Well, when they started when I was 16, that's one thing I missed. But as I've been growing up, I've been mistaken for being drunk. It's one time someone thought I was having a heart attack, but the drunkenness is definitely one of the things. Some people thought I'd been messing around, and other people have just walked by completely ignored me. And I can understand that. I can totally understand that people would be potentially too scared to intervene. So yeah, that's some of the examples that I've had. Some people have seen it. Some people have noticed and helped me. But yeah, that's it.
I would imagine that's in the minority, though, people who know about the seizures. But I think you're right. If we think somebody is drunk, we're a bit intimidated because we're not quite sure which way it's going to go. There's the unpredictability of people if they've had a lot of alcohol to consume, isn't there? So that's why raising awareness of this is so important. Are you conscious and aware that you're having a seizure at the time, or do people report back to you afterwards where you were doing this?
No. I get a feeling very, very quickly. I don't really get an aura before it happens. And if I do, it's not what people generally associate with it. Some people get a smell, and I've heard people saying that, the type of auras that people associate with epilepsy, I'm not aware of those ones. I get a rising sensation in my stomach, but it's what I would say is milliseconds beforehand. And what I associate that as being the seizure, I'm told afterwards that the seizure happens afterwards, and to me, it's like a split second. And that within that split second, I could be halfway down the road, which is what frightens me. And sometimes, in a real situation, I've crossed the road and been potentially, it could be hundreds of yards up the road. And in a couple of situations, I've almost walked off train platforms, and that's happened 3 times.
Wow. I mean, and
Mhm.
that's the terrifying thing, in that you've only got a millisecond warning. It's
Yeah.
not enough time to make any action, is it?
No, no.
So how has
No.
this impacted your life, Murray?
I've had to get used to it. I've had to realize that it is something that I've learned to walk with. Sounds strange to say, walk with this condition, and grow up with it from the age of 16. I've taught people about it, and that's one of the things that I think is really important, is that one thing that's come with having the lanyard and stuff like that. Is I've grown to not be scared of the condition, which I was extremely scared of it at the beginning. Is I talk about it all the time now, and I tell people that I meet. It's an icebreaker for me now. It's one thing is to tell people about it all the time, and part of my job is to actually educate people about one thing. One part of my job is educate people about conditions. So yeah, it's a good thing to talk.
Yeah. And can I ask, do you know if it's ever brought about by stress?
With my own epilepsy, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think it is because two of the most stressful times of my life was losing my parents, and both times I didn't have a seizure once. And when I do have my seizures, when I try to think about when they can happen when I'm most relaxed as well. So say when I'm out walking and stuff like that, the places where they've happened, I'm not always stressed. So I
Yeah.
think it's actually linked in with it can happen at any time. I think it's in a part of my brain where it hasn't formed properly, and I think it can strike whenever it wants to.
Very unpredictable.
Exactly. If I have an absent seizure, dependent on where I am, and dependent on how long it's lasted, I may need to sit down and take 5 to 10 minutes to just get myself back into sorts, take a break, just wind down a little bit, because it can sometimes just mess around with your thinking a little bit. And if it's one of those days where you have a cluster of them, that can confuse things a bit. My day might be a bit slower if I've got a headache. Today I've got one of my cluster headaches. I've actually got it now.
Oh,
I've got it now, and I'm working through it. I don't look for sympathy. I tell my manager. She'll ask me what's your day like, and I'll tell her what it's like. I'll be honest about it, but I've got to work through it.
Daniel, are absence seizures, are they common?
Yeah, they are one of the more common types of kind of epileptic seizures. And the difficulty with absent seizures is because of their nature. A lot of the time, it can take quite a long time to diagnose. So even people who have other types of seizures as well won't necessarily know they're having absent seizures on top of those other seizures. Again, it's one of those ones that's really difficult to kind of diagnose and notice a lot of the time. And we've had examples of children in school who've just been sort of told that they're not paying attention when actually they're having absent seizures and it's not been picked up.
Yeah, that's actually quite worrying, isn't it? So you're having a seizure, and then afterwards you're being told off about that because the awareness isn't there.
Yeah,
Which obviously creates a whole other cycle of problems for that child. What treatments exist? Are there any?
Well, yeah, there's medication, which, I mean, for a lot of people can be very effective at controlling seizures, but for others, not so much. So I think the latest kind of research suggests that about 50% of people with epilepsy can have their seizures controlled by
15?
medication.
15?
50%.
50?
50, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But with the right medication, that could go up to 70%. And then there are other treatments as well, brain surgery. There's quite an exciting new type of brain surgery that's hopefully being launched on the NHS this year, which is MRI guided laser surgery. So at the moment, brain surgery involves kind of cutting out a chunk of the brain, which can be very dangerous, and there's a risk of damaging other parts of the brain as well. So I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's a very small number of people with epilepsy that are eligible for the current type of brain surgery. With the MRI laser guided surgery, because it's guided lasers guided to the specific part of the brain that's causing seizures, damage to the other parts of the brain are minimized. So hopefully that could lead to a lot more people being eligible for that kind of surgery.
And is this research and new technology, is this funded by the government, or is it funded by charities such as Epilepsy Action and the other ones that exist?
Some of that research is. I think the MRI laser guided surgery was undertaken by a university. I think off the top of my head it was King's College.
Yeah.
And it has been, it's Great Ormond Street have been performing it for a while. And now it's going to be rolled out in other centres across the country through the NHS.
That's amazing.
It's been something that's been available in America for a long time, actually, but it's taken too long really to be rolled out here. But still, it's very exciting. And then for some people as well, the ketogenic diet is another treatment option that helps control seizures. And something else that is emerging as well is medicinal cannabis. That has been very effective in a lot of children. But despite being legalized by the government 4 years ago, it's still very, very difficult to access through the NHS at the moment.
So frustrating for thousands and thousands of people that it's there. Getting access to it.
And we've heard from people who have had to go through private neurologists to get prescriptions for medicinal cannabis, but that leads to costs of up to £2,000 a month.
Oh my goodness gracious, crikey. I mean, who can afford that?
Well, very, very few people. I mean, most of the people that have been able to access it are relying on kind of crowdfunding month to month to be able to afford that medication.
Yeah.
Again, during the pandemic, we kind of saw that crowdfunding effort fall apart as well, really. So it's very frustrating that despite the change in the law, it's still very difficult for people to access.
I have heard of other people who have had other health conditions, and this sort of cannabis is really, really fantastic, like preventative, but they're buying it on the black market.
And that's very dangerous, especially for people with epilepsy, where we know that kind of actually buying it on the black market can cause more seizures rather than controlling seizures like medicinal grade cannabis. So there is a big difference between the two. That lack of access is forcing people to make difficult and dangerous decisions sometimes. Yeah.
Just going back to the operation, I actually spoke to somebody on the podcast just recently whose mother had experienced seizures. I don't think they were absent seizures, but I think I'm not actually sure what type of seizures they were, but they were enough that they were really severely impacting her standard of quality of life. And she had an operation on her brain, but one of the possible side effects was short-term memory loss. And she said that it completely has done that. So she can remember things from ages and ages ago, but just that short-term memory loss, it's quite significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, I mean, it can be a side effect of kind of epilepsy medicines as well. A lot of the epilepsy medicines, unfortunately, have some really severe side effects. In some cases, well, very rare cases, but they can be worse than the actual condition itself. Long-term impacts, and then with sodium valproate, we've seen the impact it can have on unborn children if taken during pregnancy. So there's all sorts of other issues there alongside the epilepsy itself. It's a really insidious condition sometimes.
Yeah. So Murray, can you tell me about the trial that you're participating in?
Yeah, I've just come to the end of it. So I've been working with a company. I've been part of a trial with a company called Unique, and I'm wearing a device called a subcutaneous EEG, a SubQ, and it is an EEG that you wear 24 hours a day, and it is a wire that basically runs down 10 centimeters down the length of my temporal lobe. So that's where the issue is. That's where I've had the problem since I was 16.
So Murray is pointing to just for the podcast format, he's pointing to the side of his temple.
Side of my head.
Yeah, side of his head down to
side
the
of my head. that's where I always had the problem, and I've been into hospital twice to try and capture the seizures, to try and find out a bit more about them. And the trial was about trying to see if your seizure diaries were accurate. That's what it was all about. And a lot of people's seizure diaries weren't. When I was recording my seizures, I was having 6 seizures a day when I was 16. Through having a lot of the medications, I'd had probably 5 different changes over the years. I got down to maybe 6 seizures on average a month. And over the trial, what they were trying to do was capture seizures. And it was all about trying to predict whether, using algorithms, they could predict seizures going forward in the future. And by wearing this device, I know again, this is what it looks like. So you can see this disc on my chest.
Oh yeah.
That's what's underneath my clothes. So that's got a little wire that runs up to the device.
It almost looks like an Apple remote control, that sort of size, doesn't it?
Exactly. This is the second one I've just had installed. But what they found was, over 15 months, I was correct in my recording of the ones I did capture, but I'm having up to 25 a month. And I was having, over 12 months, in a 12-month period, they captured 300 subclinical seizures as well. So for every one seizure I'm having almost 5, what they call, it was like an earthquake tremor seizure. So for me personally, you were just talking about surgery. I can't have surgery and any other type of surgery because of where the epilepsy is at the moment. So for me going forward, medication is the way for me. So I've donated my my data for other people, hopefully going forward. And in the future, with medication changes, what they'll be able to do with this data live is pass it on once a month to my neurologist. She's going to get my data. She'll be able to, with algorithms, change my medication on the fly. That's what it's going to do.
Oh, right. So that's going to eliminate the side effects that Daniel was talking about.
Yeah, so potentially it could be, with this data that's going out there, she could say, right, I can see things happening. So you could actually tweak your medication. At the moment, I take bog standard amount of medication a day. She could say, I can see something happening here. So could you actually up or down it as things happen? So it might, yeah, very clever.
You are listening to the Sunflower Conversations with Chantal. To find out more about the topics discussed in this podcast, details are in the show notes.
If you weren't taking medication, would you be having like significantly more absent seizures, presumably? So you've got it in the best place that you can possibly get it, and it's around, was it 6 a day or 20 a day?
So with my seizures at the moment, I was having 6 seizures a day at the beginning. I'm now down to 6 a month, but say last month I had no seizures, and because of that, it can catch up with you. So already this week I've had 5. Oh. So it's so unpredictable, like I said. Yeah. So I can go a month with none, but then I can get hit with like a spate of them. In one weekend, a few years ago, I had 90.
Oh my goodness me. Is it tiring?
I was hospitalized.
You were hospitalized. Yeah.
And they're only absent seizures, but they actually came out a different way, and I could feel physical sensations. It felt like my skin was ripping apart. Ooh, so totally different again.
Painful. Mm-hmm. So painful. Well, the brain is the nervous center of our entire
weird.
body,
It's a very strange thing. The worst thing for me now is I'm not scared. Like I said, I'm not scared of the epilepsy itself. And I know it's very different patient to patient, person to person. The most difficult thing for me now is the side effects, is the headaches, funnily enough.
Yes.
Headaches.
Yeah. And will a paracetamol help that or not?
No. I have to take, so they class mine as being migraine, stroke, plus the headaches. So I have to take preventative tablets every single day. So, yeah.
You're shake, rattling and rolling, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to work. Yeah, I have to work with it. Like I say, it's been a long time now, and I have to work with it. So that's one of the things I very much promote, is I have to live with mine, and that's where I am with it. It's I try to own my own condition. It's difficult. It's very difficult, but I've had it a long time now, and I just have to I have to work with it. I have to do something with it.
Well, I think that your approach is very much seems to be centered around like your mental health.
Yeah,
So that kind of acceptance that this is kind of part of me, and
yeah,
I have to work with it to get the best outcome. Whereas if you were denying it, refusing it, you know, the outcome would potentially be more different for you, particularly from a mental health point of view.
yeah. I can't let it rule me. I can't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I know, but I do understand that I'm very lucky as well, because I know people with the same with living with epilepsy that have got it a lot worse. So I'm also very grateful of that as well,
Yeah.
because when I found out when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, when I started having the symptoms and things happening, I actually thought I had cancer. I
Oh,
thought
right.
because when I was 16 and these things were happening, I didn't know what was wrong with me because I didn't have it from birth, because I was like, strange things happening. So when I was diagnosed, I was happy that it was epilepsy and not something else, because I didn't know what was happening. So
That's
yeah,
quite a significant thing when you're 16 as well, isn't it?
yes,
You
I
know.
was scared. I was very scared. Yeah. Mhm.
Daniel, let's talk about Epilepsy Action, and let's talk about access. What complaints do Epilepsy Action receive, and what action is the charity taking?
So I mean, we've had kind of complaints similar to Murray's about being turned away from venues, or people not understanding the condition, not thinking that because it's an invisible condition, people question kind of you saying that you're disabled when you've got epilepsy, so you are. And kind of similar to what Murray was saying earlier as well, we've had people kind of kicked out of supermarkets when they've had a seizure because people think they're drunk or are acting out. So yeah, that's kind of the things we've had reported to us. In terms of what we're doing, always we're trying to raise awareness of the condition. So just this week we've launched a first aid video explaining what people can do if they see someone having a seizure. And that's one of the biggest things, really. A lot of people just don't know what to do, or can't recognize people having a seizure. It's something that's been reported to us as a barrier to employment as well. Employers reluctant to hire people with epilepsy because they don't know what to do. They were worried about their other employees seeing someone having a seizure and the impact that could have. And we've kind of worked with some employers, kind of providing training directly, but also launched an employer toolkit that, again, just gives that first aid information, outlines what reasonable adjustments can be made for people with epilepsy to help them find and stay in work.
Excuse me, sorry. That sounds great. And you know, it's just such a weird way, isn't it? As in, the person who has epilepsy is going through this, you know, impact to daily life, and then on top of that, it's the worry about how am I being viewed when I have a seizure. And then to know that an employer is reluctant to employ me because of the impact it might have on other people who don't have epilepsy, that's a really tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's that backwards way of looking at it, not what the impact the seizure is having on the person with epilepsy, but the impact of seeing seizure could have on other people. It's concerning from our point of view, obviously, and the impact that it has on people with epilepsy must be horrifying. And another bit of research that we've kind of seen recently was highlighting the link between people with epilepsy and agoraphobia.
Do you know what I was just going to say? Well, I wasn't just going to say earlier on. I was going to say that I can imagine that for many people, going out is a real worry.
Yeah, just the worry of having a seizure in public and worrying that people will think you're being drunk, will not know what to do if you're having a seizure. So it is really concerning. And I mean, reading between the lines of that research, that's what the assumption we made, that people were reluctant to go out. They feared going out in public just because of those misconceptions that are still there, unfortunately. And so many of the problems that people with epilepsy face comes from that lack of awareness, the misunderstanding and the misconceptions. If we can kind of knock those down one by one, then hopefully we'll improving people's lives.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about education and awareness, isn't it? That's why we're doing this podcast right now. So, Murray, can you talk me through some of the barriers that you've faced when you've been attending venues? I know that you are massively into your music. So, yeah, can you talk me through some of those barriers that you've faced and some of the quick wins that you've advised promoters that they could adopt?
I've had issues with. I like to challenge sometimes just to understand what people know or don't know about hidden disability. So sometimes I like to test the people at the venues themselves, just to sort of ask them what they, I ask them, what do you think's wrong with me and stuff like that. Get them to have a look at me, maybe check the lanyards and stuff like that. So I've done things like spot tests. I had at one venue, because I've got things on me, signs on me that anything up to 5 signs that could give away exactly what's wrong with me, aside from the lanyard that I've got that we're talking about. They have bars with areas for disabled people. The lowered bar, for example, for people with physical disabilities. So I could be at risk of having a seizure within 50 meters. So a lot of the time when there's a queue, you could go to that bar to just get a soft drink. And once I stood there for 10 minutes waiting to get served, and the bar had a empty drinks bin in front of it. So that could have been used by someone in a wheelchair. And when I went to stand there, the queue next to me, everyone was standing there looking at me, and I was accused of queue jumping because I was standing. And I had to get the bar manager's attention to actually come over, and I had to. They said, "Can I help you? The queue's over there." And I said, "Excuse me." I had to explain I had a disability, and the reason I was using this queue was because there's, I had a disability as well. So there was that example. Just another quick one was I always try to book seats on the end of an aisle. Because there has been instances in the past where I have actually had a tonic-clonic seizure 3 times in my life. So I tend not to sit in the middle of a block, because if I have a tonic-clonic, I could injure a patron. And that hasn't always been the case. So if I have a seizure, even if it's just an absence, I have left a venue, and with my wife, we will just leave so we don't interrupt anyone else's night. That hasn't always happened. So it's trying to get the venues to understand why people with epilepsy need what they need. They also need those special arrangements set up to make sure they enjoy their night, and also don't spoil it for other people. If something should happen, it's not always just about the person with the condition. It's making sure they get what they need, so it doesn't interrupt the performance as well.
Yeah,
but
it's supporting everybody.
So I would advise them to make sure their access lines are accessible. The one other thing as well, I've waited up to 45 minutes for their access lines for them to answer the phone and be cut off. A lot of them have moved now since the COVID, since pandemic. They've really cut down on their services, and they need to bring them back up to speed. They're terrible. So
but it's not like tickets are cheap to go to events, is it?
No, you pay the same price. You pay the same price as everyone else. And I've actually joined an advisory group and hopefully get some focus groups back in place. So do you know what? Some of the smaller places, the theatre's absolutely fantastic. We've got some really, really good places out there, and it's not all bad. There's some fantastic places out there that some of the bigger venues can take some wins off of. So it's not all negatives. There's some really, really good places. So yeah.
Well, you must feel very happy in the fact that you are not letting your epilepsy sort of define you and prevent you from enjoying the things that you enjoy.
Not at all.
Use
Not
your experiences to educate.
It'll always be my hobby. It'll always be my hobby. Whenever I go anywhere, we've got there's some great door people out there as well, some great staff, and wherever I can, I'll try to educate. We went to a nightclub recently. The place was fantastic, and they had a disabled toilet. They tried their best to get it right, and I let the manager know that the place was great. Just said you're potentially missing a few things in that toilet. They changed it within a week, and now it's up to standard. It's not to pick on them and do things like that, but I said, you've tried to do the right things, but it wasn't about epilepsy. I said something doesn't look right, and we actually worked together, and we made sure they got in touch with the contractor. Now it's completely to spec.
Why do you wear the sunflower?
I wear the sunflower so that people can see, they can see the unseen. So, you know, it's that thing of people not thinking that I'm drunk if I have a seizure. And also, you know, it's so they definitely know that there is something wrong with me, that it's not wrong, so that they know that I've got something else happening. And I back that up with my other lanyard to say double on top of that, just to make sure that I have got epilepsy. So if you do want to come and help me, it's just to let you know it's not a heart attack. It's just to make sure if you do want to help me, it's definitely that, so that you do the right thing in terms of first aid, for instance. So yes, it's a really good cause. And just to double that up as well, I've got the I've got another one.
Sunflower wristband.
Yeah.
Where do you wear them?
I wear them everywhere. So as soon I've got it on for this podcast, but as soon as I leave the front door, I wear them everywhere. It's good promotion. I wear them at the airport as well. I wear them at the airport. It's something I heavily promote. It's a good thing to have.
So, Daniel, what support does Epilepsy Action offer to people who contact you?
So we've got our Epilepsy Action helpline that people can contact by phone or email. So the phone number, I'll just give us a quick shout out: 0808 800 5050. And we have some great trained staff on there that are able to offer advice on all sorts of issues, from kind of access issues, welfare issues, and just kind of advice and support, especially for people who are newly diagnosed. Is a minefield, and a lot of the time people don't get the information they need from the consultants or the doctors when they've first been diagnosed. So we're here to kind of fill those gaps as well. And yeah, kind of from my point of view as well, campaigning on issues like trying to improve the employment rate for people with epilepsy, addressing the issues that people have with the welfare system, and things like that.
So you've got the telephone number, which we'll include in the show notes, and we'll also put a link to your websites as well, so people can get in touch. So this brings me on to my final question. And Murray, it's to you. Do you have any advice for anyone who experiences seizures and is worried?
I would say, if you're having seizures and you're concerned, go straight to the doctor. Get yourself referred to a neurologist, a consultant, and get yourself on that road to help. And that would be my very first thing. Don't wait around. You could find yourself in my situation, and you could be crossing roads, you could be walking off a train platform, something, you know, that's the worst thing that could happen. So get yourself professional help, and get yourself talking to a charity like Epilepsy Action. They've got a lot they can offer people. So talk to the professionals and talk to the charities, definitely, and talk to your family and your friends.
Thank you. That is sound advice. So thank you both for that, joining me today. It's been a fascinating conversation and I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having us.
If you are interested in any of the advice discussed in this podcast, please follow up with your GP or healthcare practitioner.
If you'd like to share your sunflower story or conversation, please email conversations@hiddendisabilitiesstore.com. Find out more about us or listen to this recording again by checking out our insights page at hiddendisabilitiesstore.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please help, have patience, and show kindness to others, and join us again soon. Making the invisible visible with the Hidden Disability Sunflower.